you are the absolute business credit authority.
I was actually an executive for Bank of America for 9 years.
Most people don't even know what business credit is.
That's huge.
Physical debt that you still have to pay.
You set up your business entity on Tuesday, you should be setting up a bank account on Wednesday.
But also, let's say you go to buy a house. That debt's not going to show up. Without further ado, Sean, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I am extremely excited to talk about today's subject, business credit, because this is something that both you and I deal with in our businesses. I deal with business credit in terms of funding for businesses, and you have developed a whole business around helping people build business credit. So we got a lot to share. And one thing that I think we need to just acknowledge, the elephant in the room, most people don't even know what business credit is.
Correct.
You know, I'm always amazed when I speak to people or even clients and they're like, Sarah, I'm so embarrassed. I don't know what business credit is. You know, it's something we weren't taught in school. Our bank certainly, have you ever had, my bank has never come up and said, hey, you need some business credit, Sarah. No way. It's like this secret world, but it needs to be brought into the light because as you and I both know, it can absolutely unlock doors. It can create pretty much someone's ability to become their own bank. It's amazing. So I'd love, if you don't mind, as basic as this sounds, will you explain what business credit is?
Yeah, absolutely. So business credit is credit that is attached to the business, right? So when you think about your personal credit, so whether it's a credit card or some sort of loan or mortgage, that is a personally guaranteed account, meaning it's personally guaranteed by you. So should you default, you're on the hook. And by the way, when you fill out that application, what are you giving them? You're giving them that Social Security number, right? And that 9-digit number. Now, business credit is credit that's attached to the business, so it's associated with your EIN number or your employer identification number. Okay. And why is this important? Because what you want to do as a small business owner, here's the thing, you want to divorce yourself from the business.
Yes,
as a consumer.
Absolutely.
Right? So you want to separate your business finances and business assets from your personal finances and assets. And one way to do that is by establishing business credit. So again, it's credit that's attached to the business, and that can look like credit cards. It can look like business loans, lines of credit. It can also look like vendor accounts, accounts that you pay over time, whether it's net 30s, which I'm sure we'll touch on.
So basically, you're saying that business credit doesn't show up on someone's personal credit report.
Correct. True business credit does not show up on your consumer credit report, which is why it's often coined invisible credit.
Invisible debt.
Absolutely. So
invisible debt that you still have to pay.
Oh, you still have to pay it. Absolutely.
But the beauty of it, and this is where so many business owners don't understand, by getting business credit and utilizing that for your business, you're not going to drive up your personal utilization, bring down your personal credit score, but also, let's say you go to buy a house. That debt's not going to show up, which will then not affect that magical debt to income, which is what the bank looks at. And so
correct.
By, obviously we can't catch every business owner before they start. So I always wish I could. So they would start with business credit. Most of them don't. But, getting it, building it, it enables them to free themselves almost from like a ball and chain that they're carrying if they're funding their business with their own personal finances.
Absolutely. And listen, you have access to 10 to 100 times more credit capacity on the business side than you do on the consumer side. That's huge.
Absolutely.
Okay. And secondly, when you have established business credit, what are you going to increase? You're going to increase your cash flow. And as you know, cash flow is a lifeline for any business. Yep. Having cash flow, right? So, and I think this played out, especially during COVID. Unfortunately, I saw some businesses that unfortunately did not make it through COVID because they didn't have established lines of credit for that rainy day.
Absolutely.
Right, under the business. Or they extended so much of their personal credit that either they were overextended, so they were over leveraged, so banks didn't want to touch them because, again, they maxed out their personal credit for business use, which is a bad idea. Or B, times were hard and their credit took a hit, whether they had a late payment or they had an account that was closed. Now they're even worse of a spot because They can't get access to the funding
Yep.
they need because their personal credit is shot.
It's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle because they use their personal credit to run a business.
I see it all the time, every day. It's painful.
So establishing business credit allows you to, again, effectively separate your business and your business assets and finances from your personal. Your personal credit is for your personal business, right? So you should not have business expenses affecting your personal assets, expenses, your personal life, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I always joke, you are the absolute business credit authority, but for listeners, they don't know that. I'd love for you to share a little bit of your background, because you have a very extensive background in the banking industry and the credit industry. So if you don't mind sharing that a little bit.
Yeah. So I was actually an executive for Bank of America for 9 years, from 2005 until 2013. And then I started my first business as a credit consultant back in 2013 and founded CBM Business Solutions 3 years later in 2016, because I found myself in the credit space working with so many small business owners that didn't know the importance. I found, obviously they're consumers like everybody else, so they have personal needs, but more importantly, or as important, they were using their personal credit to run a business, which is a recipe for disaster. And so that's why I founded CBM Business Solutions in 2016. But in any event, I've been in financial services for, again, going on over a decade and change.
Wow.
And so, I've been in business over a decade change. I've been in financial services over 2 decades.
Jeez.
And so
it's just in your blood at this point.
I guess.
It's in your blood.
I guess. And again, being a small business owner myself has given me additional perspective and insight as I work with, small business owners and achieving their goals.
And just, I'm going to put it out there right now. You are a huge proponent of business credit. I've seen for myself, you've used it for some incredible things. Mm-hmm. What have you been able to use business credit for? Yeah.
So, and through your help as well, but having having business credit, I've been able to purchase a vending business with zero financials. The company was only established 2 months prior to me getting access to the funding to purchase the business. Also purchased a CBD store. Was able to raise, between me and my wife, close to $200,000 in money through your capital stacking program.
Wow.
And that was because, in large part, I had good personal credit, but also I had established business credit, which makes a difference. And I've been able to get various lines of credit through multiple businesses because of again, having established business credit.
And didn't it also, I know you have some Airbnbs. Did you use business credit at all in?
Yes, I did. Yes. And so we do have, I have two commercial properties, and we utilized business credit to rehab 4 different units between the 2 properties. Wow. And that looked like, business credit cards, to paying contractors, to using corporate cards like from Home Depot, Lowe's, as well, to purchase material, pay contractors. So we've actually done 3 guts.
Wow.
With business credit. So again, not using any of my personal funds.
Wow. Not putting yourself into personal debt.
No.
So really, what we're highlighting here is business credit can be used for anything. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
You just have to understand it, the concepts, and then you can use it for anything. I have real estate investors using it for the down payment for purchasing properties. It's amazing. So, we've kind of established a little bit about what it is, but the biggest question is how you get it. So I won't make you go into a whole dissertation, but for the average person, can you kind of give us a little bit of a step-by-step of how to establish and build business credit?
Sure. So the first thing you want to do is make sure when you establish first of all, you want to set up your business entity, right? So have a good business plan and have a good, make sure you've done your due diligence so that you can ensure that the market is ready for whatever service or product you're gonna offer. That's step 1. Step 2 is you want to set up a business entity. It should be either an LLC, which is typically what most startups will use because they've got limited limited revenue. But you can also do a corporation such as an S corp or C corp or even a partnership. What I would not do is a sole proprietorship, because with a sole proprietorship, you're basically blending the lines between personal and business, which can be troublesome. So I would suggest either, like I said, a corporation or LLC. Once you have that set up, then you want to get your bank account. You should get your bank account is paramount in setting that up as soon as possible. So if you set up your business entity on Tuesday, you should be setting up a bank account on Wednesday or even the same day. Right? A lot of banks when or lenders, when you go into them for funding, they look at the date you actually set up your bank account as day one versus when you actually did the paperwork, the Department of State. Once you have those basics down pat, then it's really about business fundability and business credibility. So banks want to know that, or lenders want to know that you are a legitimate business. So how do you show banks that you're a legitimate business? Because if you're asking for funding, or by completing a loan application or applying for a credit card, they want to see that you're a legitimate business. Why? Because there's a lot of fraud out there, right? Shell corporations, fraud. Yeah. And so what can you do to ensure that banks will look at you as a legitimate business? A couple different things. One is you want to make sure you have a legitimate business address. You want to have a business telephone number, not your cell phone number. You want to have a website, even a basic website. I don't care what product or service you offer. You should have a basic business website, right? A business email. A business email is typically tied to your website or the domain, right? So instead of Moody Blues at Yahoo, I'm going to have Sean at moodybluesconsulting.com. Right? Again, I want to be listed on the National 411 directory. But bottom line is, you want to have, there are data points that banks and or lenders look for to ensure that they're dealing with a legitimate business. Once you have all that set up, then it's really about working with vendors, lenders, and banks that report to the business credit bureaus. Right. So that's the basic step of. So again, I know we don't want to get into the weeds, but just like on the consumer side, you have Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion as your consumer credit bureaus. On the commercial or business side, you have business credit bureaus such as Dun & Bradstreet, Experian Business, and Equifax. Okay. As well. Okay. So now, if you're not working with lenders, vendors, banks that actually report to those business credit bureaus, you cannot build business credit. So another piece of it, an important piece, which is why we came up with the book, is you have to know what lenders actually report to the business credit bureaus. Because if you don't have qualifying payment experiences, and by the way, you need at least 3 qualifying payment experiences to generate a business credit score. But again, if you're not working with those lenders, if you're working with ABC lender that doesn't report to the bureaus, unless you can get it manually added, which can take time and money, because Dun & Bradstreet's going to charge you to do that. You should know the lenders and vendors that actually do report to the credit, and banks that report to the business credit bureaus. And lastly, I'll share that business credit is built in what we call tiers and or layers, right? And so an example of a tier 1 or layer 1 account would be like Granger, Uline, Advanced Auto Parts, right? These are accounts where virtually any brand new business can get qualified for, and you're going to open these accounts under your business EIN number, not under your your social security number, right? If you put your social security number down in the application, 9 times out of 10, you're personally guaranteeing that account, which means either A, it's not a true business credit, account, or B, even though it is a business account, it's going to show on your personal credit report, which you don't want.
Absolutely. No, I think that's where most people get so hung up, is they don't understand the process of even how to start. So they get lost. They get really, really lost, which does lead me to the point, and we'll talk about it more at the end, about the book that you and I put together to really help people that are lost, because it's a confusing topic, and there's not much out there on it that's accurate and easy to understand. I do want to back up a second, because there's a little thing that I have seen happen a lot. You talked about going and opening up a business bank account. Banks are notorious when you're there. They say, "Oh, do you want a business credit card?" And you think, "Yeah, I want a business credit card." So you take it. The reality is most of those are not true business credit cards. Your business is an authorized user on there, but it's still showing up on your personal credit report. So I see that a lot when people come to me for funding and I'm looking at their credit report and I'm like, you have a super high balance on this card with, Bank of America. And they're like, no, that's a business credit card. And I'm like, no, that's reporting on your personal. So, be careful. I always tell people, make sure you're asking while it is tempting, make sure you find out, is this truly a business credit card that won't report on personal? And most of the time, if you're just opening up a business bank account, you're not going to be getting a business credit card that's a true business credit card.
Yeah, that's a great point. To the point that you made, make sure you ask, because it's like, for instance, Capital One is notorious for that.
Yep.
They have a lot of business credit cards, but they'll show up on your personal credit report, right? And so, whereas Chase, if you ask for a true Chase Inc. or business credit card, it will not show up on your personal credit report. Bank of America has cards, business credit cards that do show up on the personal credit reports, and business credit cards that don't show on your. And to your point, when I opened my first business, Moody Blues Consulting, I got my first business credit card from Bank of America. Guess what? It did show on my personal credit report because I didn't know enough about business credit at the time. But since then, here we are 11 years later, I actually have Bank of America business credit cards that do not show up on my personal credit report. So they are personally guaranteed. However, meaning, hey, if you default the bank, there's no collateral on here.
Yeah.
And by the way, I would hope that no small business owner has any intention of defaulting the bank. But the bottom line is, to the point you made earlier, a true business credit card will not show up you want a business credit card that does not show up on your personal credit report.
Right. Well, and word to the wise, I will say, because I get a lot of business owners that apply, they want business loans and right away they say, I don't want anything that's personally guaranteed. Well, that kind of gives me red flags, alarms go off. Like, are you planning on not paying it? What is such a concern? Because even if it is personally guaranteed, still not showing up, on the personal credit report, it is an alarming piece. And even if it is under the business, they're still going to find out who's behind there if you do default on it.
And the reality is, look, if you want, and I think this ties to, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, but I know this ties to capital stacking, right? If you're going to get access to that type of, $150,000, $200,000, the bank has to have some mechanism in place, to recoup that money should things go south. And so, because again, this is unsecured.
Right.
This is unsecured.
No financials, nothing.
Right. And so, it's important. For me, I don't worry about a personal guarantee as long as it's a visible credit. If I have a chance of getting, now granted, let's be clear, and this is in the book too. Not too many plugs, but there's a ton of accounts that you could open.
Absolutely.
That have no personal guarantee. Right. But at the end of the day, if I have a choice between a $5,000 non-PG credit card or a $50,000 PG credit card, and both don't show my credit report, I'm taking the PG
absolutely
card
all day.
That's just what it is.
All day. So we kind of covered the basics: how to start, set up your entity, how to establish credit. You talked a little bit about a Paydex score. How would someone go about finding out what their Paydex score is? How do you even look at your business credit?
Great question. So, Paydex is the score that Dun & Bradstreet uses. And to go to Dun & Bradstreet, you go to D, just like the exact letters D, N as in Nancy, B as in boy. So Dun & Bradstreet, dnb.com. And you can have, first things first, you need to get a free DUNS number. So without a DUNS number, you can't establish business credit. Even if you're working with lenders that report to Dun & Bradstreet, if you don't have a DUNS number, you can't build credit. So that's step one. And so to that, you have to have at least 3 payment experiences with lenders that report to Dun & Bradstreet to actually generate a Paydex score. And Paydex goes from 0 to 100. A good Paydex score is an 80 or above. And you can get an 80 Paydex score in as little as 60 days by having at least 3 different payment experiences. Now, to your question, and I apologize it took so long, where do you get the Dun & Bradstreet? You used to be able to go to this app called Nav. N as in Nancy, A as in Apple, V as in Victor. They recently removed it from Nav. So the only way to get your Paydex score now is directly through Dun & Bradstreet. And they have a number of different premium offerings to pay for it. And it's not cheap. It's at least like $100 some odd, and depending on the tier that you choose. But that's one of the only ways to get your Paydex score now. For Experian, your Experian IntelliScore, which also goes from 0 to 100, and an 80 is a good score, and then your Equifax delinquency predictor score as well. You can actually get those two scores from NAV, which I mentioned earlier. But the Paydex score, which is Dun & Bradstreet, you have to go directly through Dun & Bradstreet now to get that.
And I'm sure there's some people listening thinking, gosh, that just sounds like a lot of work. What's the point of even doing this? I do want to share how important it is, regardless, to build that footprint, to build that business credit history. So we all know how fun it is when you go to buy or lease a car. It's A, they give you a bunch of inquiries, but B, I don't know about you, I get really nervous. I hate going in for loans because I've had bad experiences where they literally feel like it's their job to give me their personal opinion on my credit. It's horrible. And so recently, Rick surprised me with this, but he had went and leased a vehicle for me or through our business. And so we had to go sign the papers on it. And I'm nervous the whole way there. I'm like, oh, I hate this process. However, we leased it through the business. Guess what? They checked our business credit score, which we've been in business 3 years. And we haven't gone overboard, but we've done a good job of building business credit. And we were able to do it on that. They didn't have to check my personal credit. And I kept waiting for the surprise of them and going, okay, Sarah, what's your social? We're going to check it. And I'm waiting and waiting. Not that it's bad, but I just hate that experience. Didn't check it. We got to sign under the name. Our business is the lien holder. And we walked away with a brand new vehicle without it showing up on our personal credit, without them checking our personal credit and avoiding that whole disastrous, stressful situation. It was awesome. And at that moment, I really felt like, okay, what I talk about all the time, dang it, I'm right. It was one of those aha moments of, doing what I preach, but it was awesome. And not that I'm not encouraging frivolous spending. Like, we honestly looked at where, we had no car payments. Our business needed a good write-off. And so it was very, very reasonable for us. But it was awesome. And I remember that day, I went home and made a bunch of videos about it because I'm like, everyone needs to know this really does work. I just tested it myself, and it was awesome, absolutely awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
and look, I tell people, great credit, whether it's business credit, personal credit, gives you more options.
Oh, totally does, absolutely.
It opens up a ton. And going back to the point you made, you actually saved on you're protecting your business cash flow.
Correct.
Imagine you put that on your personal name.
No.
Right. So, and it's huge. It's huge. And again, the credit capacity is another is another big value add. I mean, you're talking 10 to 100 times more
absolutely
credit capacity. Yep. Right.
It's amazing. I see it all the time.
And one thing that's not shared a lot is business credit is an intangible asset. And what I mean by that is, let's say you decide to sell your business, which when you're doing 100, 200 million, whatever it is you're doing, that business credit is transferable upon sale of the business.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So it's an asset. So whatever line of credit you have, whatever business credit you have established is transferable. That's huge.
That's very huge. And someone can walk in and have that already established.
Yep.
That's a big value add as opposed to nothing. Absolutely. So, talk about business credit. In your experience, what are some of the most common barriers or challenges that business owners face when, establishing to build business credit? What are those common mistakes?
Well, one is they don't know where to go to start to even, okay, well, how do I get started? They don't know, right? They don't understand what the benefit is to them. And then once they understand that, okay, it's okay. Now what lenders am I working with? Where do I start? Because remember, as I mentioned earlier, business credit is built in layers. So if you're going to try to get a layer 3, so for instance, someone tried to lease a vehicle under their business and they just started and they have no established business credit, guess what? 9 times out of 10, they're going to get declined because they don't have an established history. So there's a process, there's a roadmap. There's a roadmap to build it, like I said, in layers. So, and the average small business owner doesn't know doesn't know that roadmap, doesn't know, okay, I got to build my layer 1 accounts first. Layer 2 is going to be my store, my corporate cards, like, WEX as an example, which are your gasoline cards, right? So with WEX now, you can go to, for instance, I have a universal Sunoco card. I can use it virtually any gas station across the country. And when I make the purchase, I get an invoice from WEX. And none of this shows on my personal credit report. It's why? Because it's under the business. And so, but my point is, you have to know, you have to understand how the layers work and how to build the credit strategically. Also, another piece of it too is there are qualifying purchases. You have to have 3 qualifying payment experiences. So let me break that down even more. So for instance, I mentioned those tier 1 or layer 1 accounts like Quill and Uline and Granger, right? So if the purchase typically needs to be between $50 to $100. So even if I set up a corporate account with Quill and I only spend $20, more than likely that trade line is not going. That's not a qualifying purchase that's going to show up on my business credit report. And I need at least 3 payment experiences to show on that report before I can even get a score, right? Secondly, to drive a score, you want to pay early, but not too early. So if it's a net 30 account, a net 30 means that when I make the purchase, I don't pay at the time of purchase. They send me an invoice, and a net 30 means I have 30 days to pay that invoice. Well, guess what? The sweet spot is to pay right after day 20. You want to pay that invoice. So you're paying early. You're not waiting to 30 days because with business credit, believe it or not, if you pay a little bit early, you can actually build your business credit faster, and you get your score a little higher too by paying early, but not too early. If I pay in 10 days, it may not show up in my report.
It's tricky.
So these are so I'm saying there's some nuance. Right. There's some nuance to it. So the average purchase needs to be between $50 to $100, and like I said, with net 30s, you want to pay, between 20 and 30, you want to pay there, right? And on the applications, certain business credit applications, they will ask for your social security number a lot, even though it may not be PG, because they still have to authenticate you.
Yep, make sure you're real.
They want to make sure that you're real. There's a lot of fraud out there. So again, it's knowing which lenders report to the bureaus and which ones don't.
And then isn't there some importance as well when you're filling out these applications to be consistent with what you put in terms of information?
Yes, and all your information should be congruent. And what I mean by that is, so the information that you have at the Department of State, whatever state you started your entity, the IRS, and which is where you have your EIN number, and the actual Business Credit Bureau. All that information should be consistent, right to the T. So if it says suite, like for instance, my address has floor 2, FL2. I can't have that. I can't have the Department of State say FL2, and then the IRS says floor spelled out 2, and then Dun and Bradstreet has suite 2. It might seem like a minimal difference. That can be the difference between an approval and a decline. So you want to make, again, I go back to when I started this conversation, that business fundability, business credibility piece, right? So making sure everything is congruent and everything is consistent.
And I personally have seen that. I'll have clients that'll come to me and say, Sarah, it's not working. I'm getting denied for basic business accounts. And I'm like, okay, well, let's dive deep. Have you changed anything? Is your information on? Well, I changed my business address. I changed it, but I only changed it, in one place. And I'm like, well, what are you putting in your applications? Well, I'm putting the new address on some, but then I thought on the other ones I should put the old. And I'm like, bingo, and it might seem trivial and silly, but that makes such a difference.
Huge difference. Absolutely,
a huge difference. Funny story I have for you on the net 30s. So, I know the tiers, because of you, I know the value of the tiers, and I practice it because we have multiple entities. And a lot of these vendors, it's not really relevant stuff that I would ever use, but the one thing they consistently almost all have is toilet paper and cleaning supplies. So when we were deep in the throes of building business credit, and you have to do over $50, Man, we stocked up enough toilet paper to go through 2 more COVIDs. I mean, literally it was, and I remember Rick's like, are you kidding? We're having more toilet paper? Like every closet was full, but it worked. I mean, and that's, you got to find something because a lot of these are like industrial supply companies, stuff like that. It's not like I'm going to find cute women's clothing when building net. That'd be awesome. And I'd have built net 30s like that if that were the case. Maybe someone should think about that, but I'm kidding.
And that's a good point. But the thing too, people should understand is you don't have to make. So with these vendors, to the point. So you said you bought toilet paper, and by the way, I bought flashlight, batteries, work gloves,
First aid kit.
The first aid kit. I bought. Yep. Good news is you only have to make one qualifying purchase. So, like for instance, I'm not going to use work gloves in my profession. I'm in finance. So, but all right, I have them.
Yeah.
But my point is you only have to make one qualifying purchase. So it's not like you have to keep making recurring purchases to build the business credit. Right. So that's important to know. Secondly, and there's a lot of influencers and social media people talking about this. Oh, forget the net 30s. You can skip that. You don't need to do that. Here's what I'll tell you. Yes, in certain cases, like for instance, the capital stacking, right? As an example, if you've got great personal credit, you can get access to those business credit cards that don't have it. But that doesn't mean, now you have if you have 6 or 7 credit cards or, $100,000 that you're all set with with building a what I would call a fully fleshed out business credit profile.
Correct.
I guess the analogy I would use is, let's say you get, let's say you have one secured credit card or 2 secured credit cards, and then you're going for a mortgage.
Yeah.
And you have a mortgage, and you say you're all done. Well, if you only have 3 accounts, you still have what's called a thin file. And by the way, you probably wouldn't get a mortgage with 2 secured cards.
No.
Right. And so my point is, it's not just about, yes, at the end of the day, we want to have access to the capital. As small business owners, we need access to the capital so we can protect our cash flow, so that we can maneuver and grow our business as we see fit when we need to grow. We can pivot when we need to pivot. Having said that, when you think about business credit, it's not just about the dollar amount, or the amount of funding, which is important. Don't get me wrong, but it's about the profile. And the same rings true for personal credit, but it absolutely rings true for business credit. So there's a bigger difference when you went into that car dealership and you got that vehicle. You had multiple trade lines that were showing. So they're saying, okay, this is an experienced business, and they have experience with different types of business credit. They have an established Paydex score. They have an Experian Intella score. Okay, we can do business, and you're qualified. Versus you have 1 or 2 business credit cards that you just opened up, and you have a $40,000 limit, but you don't have enough established business credit. It's not enough.
And speaking of that, so I don't want to derail us and get into capital stacking, but what we've found is that, yes, you can jumpstart and go into capital stacking. However, you'll actually get better results with capital stacking if you have already established business credit. So if you already have some net 30 accounts, you've got those trade lines, odds are you're going to do much better with your capital stacking results than if you are just a brand new business. Not to say, and that's why I love capital stacking, because you can be brand new, and I highly encourage it. It's a great way of funding without financials. But for an established business, and you have spent the time, made the effort, you're going to do so much better with capital stacking because there's that footprint. They can see that history there as well as what's on your personal credit. So the two can really go hand in hand and benefit each other.
Absolutely. And you just brought up another thing that you just want to remember. So another score that people don't really talk about a lot when it comes to business credit is your FICO SBSS score, which is your small business scoring system score, which a ton of lenders, believe it or not, use that. And by the way, the SBA uses that. So if you're going for an SBA loan less than $500,000 or less, with the exception of the express loans, they're going to pull your SBSS score. Now, what is the SBSS score? It is a hybrid of your personal consumer credit scores and your business credit scores. So if you don't have established business credit, they're forced to only focus on your personal credit. And by the way, they're looking for a score of a minimum for the SBA, and for lenders, they're looking for a minimum score of between 155 and 160. Oof. Okay. And so again, the importance of another important reason is to make sure you establish business credit, because if you go for an SBA loan, they're going to pull that score. They're going to pull that score. And if it's less than a 140, and by the way, they're going to look at your business. It's a combination of your business credit, your personal credit, your business financials, and then whatever information you put on the application for that particular loan. So again, it's a game changer.
I'm curious, and you showed me before. I know you have amassed quite a bit of business credit, haven't you?
I have.
You've got quite the stack of business credit cards. It's impressive. When you pull that out, I'm like, whoa. If you don't mind, a rough estimate, how much business credit would you say you have?
Between lines of credit and credit cards, it's close to 400,000.
Jeez. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I mean, and for any business owner listening, imagine if you had access to $400,000. How much that could do for you. That could keep you from having to go to the bank and go through that awful process. You could essentially be your own lender. It's amazing. So anyone that thinks it's not worth it, it absolutely is. And I've talked to people that have even more than 400,000, and it's easy to do, because business credit is, once you start using it and figuring it out, it is easy to build and accumulate more, much more so than personal credit.
Absolutely.
And that's what people don't understand. Personal credit, you rack it up, max it out, you're in trouble. Business credit, you use the heck out of it, but do pay it down, pay it off. Whew, you're going to be getting increases and additional offers right and left, and a lot of that business credit, and where we specialize with capital stacking, a lot of those have that introductory of 0%, which makes extremely cheap when you're borrowing money at 0%. That's crazy, absolutely crazy. Mm-hmm. Well, Sean, I think you've covered a lot about business credit. I know we could probably talk for 10 more hours on the whole thing. I'm sure there's some people that probably are like, okay, that's awesome, but all that sounds way overwhelming. So I know you have something available that can actually do this for people. Do you want to tell me a little more about it?
Sure. So assuming this, we talked about one of the barriers of building business credit is the average small business owner doesn't understand which accounts they need to apply for, and then in what order, how to build it in those tiers. And so because of that, it takes the average small business owner between 12 to 18 months to establish. I'm talking about a fully fleshed out business credit profile. I'm not talking about getting one business credit card or getting a net 30 or two. I'm talking about building out a fully fleshed business credit profile. So we have a business credit builder program where we have a team of specialists that will actually do a majority of the heavy lifting for you, and work alongside you, including helping you with the applications. So we take all the guesswork out.
Wow.
And so in doing so, we were able to expedite the process to 6 to 8 months to have a fully fleshed out business credit profile.
Wow.
And typically clients have $80,000 plus in business credit between lines, credit cards, and net vendor accounts as well.
Wow.
When they're done, on average.
And if a client, let's say they have multiple entities, multiple LLCs, could they do that with several?
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of business credit. You can build a business credit profile for each business entity.
Wow.
There's no limit.
That program, I'll be honest, I've been working through it. It is amazing. And especially for the business owner that's busy, doesn't have the time, because it is possible. We all know you can do it yourself, but having that help is incredible.
Yeah, and I think why I like this program, because I've sold the programs where, I won't say the name of the program, but most people probably know it, where it's basically just modules, and again, the program was okay, but what I found is the average small business owner is so busy they don't want to sign up, go into computer, and have to read through modules and go through everything. So with this program, there's also an accountability piece built in, because it's phone calls, and you're working with actual techs that this is what they do for a living. And so they'll walk you through the application process. You have homework, and there's constant follow-up, or consistent follow-up. And so I think that's what kind of separates this program from a lot of the programs out there. So for the true entrepreneur or business owner that's super busy, that's on the go, knowing they're going to get a phone call on,
I got to get it done.
Right. And again, they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you, including helping you with the applications. Not just saying, here's an application, fill it out.
Nope. They
So,
know how to do it right, what's
correct.
put in there. So if someone were to want to do this, because it is amazing and probably sounds very tempting to those that are understanding the value of business credit but don't have the time, how would they find you, or how would they find that?
So they can either go to CBM. So it's like cat, boy, mouse. That's actually my son's initials, but
I've always wondered.
that's my son's
I'm
initials.
like, where did CBM come from?
Christian Blake Moody.
Oh, I like that.
That's my Y. But CBM Business Solutions. So it's just cbmbusiness.com.
Okay.
cbmbusiness.com. And then we're on social media as well. So whether you want to go Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn as well.
And what, you've been doing this for a while and offering that program and educating people on building business credit. What would you say you enjoy most? What drives you behind to do this?
I think helping the solopreneur, the new entrepreneur that came up with an idea. They had a full-time job or 9 to 5, and they really want to put themselves out there, and they want any advantage that they can get. Any opportunity I get to level the playing field. Like I was able to get a landscaper. The guy just started his own landscaping business. Just finally got his truck going. I was able to get him a $40,000 line of credit. So, and you've been instrumental in helping as well with alternative financing, in addition to helping them establish business credit. But it's just fun to like I said, work. These are not multi-billion-dollar corporations.
No.
These are small business owners just like myself and you.
Yep.
That are looking to get us, build a successful business and leave a legacy. And that's what I'm looking to do. So we have common interests. So it's always rewarding to help them, help the small business owners on their journey. And I think the business credit piece, the word is just slowly starting to get out right now as a catchphrase on social media. Now it's really just putting some teeth into it to say, okay, you heard about it. Here's not only why it's great, but here's how you actually do it. And by the way, if you don't have time to do it or the patience to do it, we can help you with that too. So we give them options.
Absolutely. And you and I also did something together that's pretty awesome for those people that want to potentially do this themselves or understand more about it.
Absolutely. So the book.
The book. We wrote a book about it. And it's not a book that's going to keep you up all night because it's just so exciting, but it's filled with all this information. Like, I feel like you unloaded your brain into this book because you've got a lot of knowledge in there. And, it walks you through how to build business credit. It breaks down those tiers. It has so many of the vendors in there, but not just who they are, but how to apply, where to apply, who they report to, all those things that are shrouded in mystery and nobody knows. You unveiled it all, and it's awesome.
Well, I was glad to partner with you on this because I think we covered all our bases with this book. Because to your point, we got the business credit pieces, and we kind of just broke it down in layman's terms so they can really follow through. But then we tied in what you do, which is the capital stacking and the financing, because everything's related.
It is,
right?
All related.
Because if you build a business credit, I think it's worth repeating. If you build a business credit, if you're looking to do the capital stacking, that's going to make it's going to improve your funding, not only just approval, but I guess the funding amounts as well, right?
Yep.
So, no, I'm very proud of it, and I think it's a tool that small business owners, especially, like I said, the startups, the new entrepreneurs, even the seasoned small business owners.
Absolutely.
There's a ton of seasoned entrepreneurs out there that have been in business for years. I've worked with them that have not utilized business credit.
None.
Have either used cash, strictly cash. Our friend John, we call him John B, who was just on his radio show. He's using all cash. He's bringing in tons of revenue each month, and he was using cash to pay all of his expenses. And this is a successful realtor broker.
You're limiting yourself so much. I mean, besides the obvious too.
Right. And so he's thrilled, and now he's established some business credit. He's gone through the program, and he's still in the program now, but he's got lines of credit now, and he's doing the capital stacking. So And he says his I don't want to speak for him, but it's done wonders for his cash flow.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, because then you're not using
Now you're tying it up.
Absolutely. And that's what people don't get. And I feel like you and I were like these we're these crusaders in the industry, like ripping it out and putting it out in the open, because it's been shrouded in mystery for so long. So many people don't know about it. And I think what I like about you and I, we don't keep it a secret like, oh, you got to pay us to get the gem. It's, hey, this is what's out there. I mean, that's why we did the book. Let's put it out there so that everybody has access, because you need to know this information. It is such a game changer in your whole financial landscape, and people don't know it. And one quick story, I talked, just like you, we talked to so many different types of people and business owners, and I'll never forget, it was a few months ago. It was someone that had found me on TikTok, because I get all sorts of people, different industries, you name it. And super nice gentleman. And he starts telling me, Sarah, I'm blown away. I have owned multiple multi-billion-dollar businesses, bought, sold. I consider myself to be really smart, have done incredible things. I knew nothing about business credit and capital stacking. Like, you have blown my mind with this. And it wasn't an ego moment for me at all. It was a moment of, this needs to get out there. If people that, they are successful, if they don't know about it, imagine what they could have done if they had. I mean, he could have had multi-trillion. No, I'm kidding. But, it's really eye-opening that you can't just assume that just because someone has, successful business that they know about business credit.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of them don't.
Oh,
a lot of them don't. And it's eye-opening. Like, it's horrifying, to be quite honest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it's north of 70% of small business owners either don't know what business credit is or where to go about getting the scores or even understanding it. It's like 3 out of 4, almost 3 out of 4 small business owners. So, as I've been working with small business owners now for the last decade, I don't care if they've been in business 20 years or 20 days. Mm-hmm. It's across the board. So there's a huge opportunity out there. And like I said, it could be a game changer.
Absolutely.
And I hate to, talk about the black cloud, but even during COVID, it had some of those small business, not all of them. Every circumstance is different, but some of those small business owners may have been able to sustain had they had established business credit.
Absolutely.
Can be useful for a rainy day, right? And then protect your cash flow.
Well, and I will say, Rick and I started our business during COVID, which wasn't necessarily the best, but the one thing that was amazing is we were able to save a lot of business owners, because a lot of them with capital stacking. So either they had established some business credit or they had good personal credit. And Sean, I'm telling you, I mean, they'd call and they'd cry like, Sarah, I'm closed. I don't have a staff, but I still have to pay the bills. I still have to pay my lease. I can't obviously get a loan from a bank. They're going to laugh at me because I have no revenue coming in. What am I going to do? Like, this is like the worst thing that's happened in my life. And I mean, it was a lot of those phone calls. And unfortunately, I couldn't help every single person as much as I wanted to. I'm someone that I wanted to go and save everybody, but we were able to help a lot of people with capital stacking. Even if it was $40,000 at 0%, they were able to keep going and not have to go bankrupt and not have to close their business. And I mean, that was a very hard time for a lot of people. And to be able to offer that and for people to be able to utilize that was just amazing. And I mean, it really did show me the power, again, of business credit, because it was a time where you couldn't get funding anywhere else. Mm-hmm. You could not get a loan because you have zero revenue, and that's what banks are looking at. Mm-hmm. SBA, all of that. And this was the one thing that people could do. And I won't ever forget it. And hopefully we never go through something like that again. But, right. It was really just affirming to me why we're doing the right thing mm-hmm. by teaching people about it. But just the power of it is just amazing, amazing. So thank you, Sean. I've again loved this conversation. I'm just, your insight, your knowledge is just incredible. And the whole world needs to know it, because it's It's amazing. You just are a walking encyclopedia on business credit. Again, I learn something from you every single time we talk.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you. Well, thank you, Sarah, and give yourself some more credit. Sarah, you are and I think I said this on the last podcast, but you are an authority when it comes to when I think of business, just business financing and business in general. So in this environment right now, with the economy, business owners need to know who you are, and so you're an authority.
Thank you.
So
I don't know if I'm going
to. I learned from you. I learned a ton from you too. So I give yourself some credit.
Well, I think what I do that's unique is I have to understand things on a basic level, right? So I ask you questions a lot, and you're good at explaining it because I can't understand it. If you're going to use big words and I just shut my mind and I'm like, I don't bother. There's no sense in that for me. So I understand things on a very basic level. And so I think why people value what I do is because I explain things in the way I understand it, which, to be honest, that's how most people understand it. The problem with the finance world is there's all these experts that want to make themselves feel better. So they use these fancy words, these acronyms, and the average person leaves the podcast show, whatever, thinking, I can never do that. I don't understand it. That's way out of my league. The reality is everybody can do it. You just have to understand the basics and forget all those fancy words. I don't like fancy words. I don't like acronyms. I try not to use them because the average person, that doesn't help them whatsoever. And I no shame to all the experts out there because they have their own value, but I am more of a believer in explaining these concepts in a basic granular level so that everybody, it is an even playing field. Yep. It is an even playing field. And I hope that for everyone that listened today, I hope that, well, I know that you now understand the value of business credit. I'm certain we imparted that on every single listener. And I hope that you are at least considering that you should look into building business credit, whether you do it yourself, whether you go through Sean or someone similar and you build that business credit. It needs to be done. It absolutely needs to be done. And it will unlock doors that you never thought were possible and can completely transform your business and frankly, your life. Absolutely. So thank you for sitting with us today, and until next time.